All request is that you don't put it on the floor. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Buddhika Acharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad, Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Buddhika Acharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad, Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavin ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. So before we begin, I'm going to read the translation, because we sing the song, but sometimes we don't concentrate on the meaning. Krishna is the lover. This is written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the father of Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Krishna is the lover of Radha. He displays many amorous pastimes in the groves of Vrindavan. He is the lover of the cowherd maidens of Braj and the holder of the great hill named Govardhan. He is the beloved son of Mother Yashoda, the delighter of the inhabitants of Braj, and he wanders in the forest along the banks of the river Yamuna. Jai. Meditation on Krishna. So, we're going to be studying on page 57 today. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 7th day of February 2022 in San Diego, the glorious appearance day of Sri Advaita Acharya, we're studying the Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are it's still in chapter 1, observing the armies on the battlefield of Kuruksetra, text 41 at the bottom of 57. Oh, we're on 44 already? Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Okay. Text 44 at the top of page 60. Thank you. Aho bata mahat papam kartum vyavasita vayam yad raja sukalobhena hantum swajanam udyataha. Aho batamahat papam kartum vyavasitavayam yad raja sukalobhena hantum swajanam udyataha. Aho batamahat papam kartum vyavasitavayam yad raja sukalobhena hantam swajanamudhyataha. Aho batamahat papam kartum vyavasitavayam yad raja sukalobhena hantam swajanam udhyataha. Govardhan. Aho batamahat papam kartum vyavasitavayam yadbhaja sukalobhena hantam swajanam udhyataha. Prabhu. Aho batamahat papam kartum vyavasitavayam yadraja sukalobhena hantam swajanamudhyata. Aho batamahat papam kartum vyavasitavayam yadraja sukalobhena hantam swajanamudhyata. Go ahead, Prakash. Aho batamahat papam. Can you just grab the seat, and come on this side. Antam udjita, ladies. Aho batamahat papam tum vyavasitavayam sukalobhena hantam swajanamudnyata. Okay, hold on. Time out. Stephanie, do you need a book? It's an extra. Come on. Do we have any more stands? Yeah. There you go. Okay. Thank you, Boo. Anyone in Zoom want to chant? Okay. 5 seconds. That's all you get. That's what I've been told. Word by words. Aho, alas. Bata, how strange it is. Mahat, great. Papam, sins. Kartum, to perform. Vyavasitaha have decided, vayam, we, yat, because, raja sukhalobhena, driven by greed for royal happiness, huntum, to kill. On page 60, we're on page 60. Swajanam, kinsman, urditaha, trying. Translation. So Arjuna is speaking to Krishna. Alas, how strange it is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts, driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness. We are intent on killing our own kinsmen. Purport. Driven by selfish motives, one may be inclined to such sinful acts as the killing of one's own brother, father, or mother. There are many such instances in the history of the world. But Arjuna, being a saintly devotee of the Lord, is always conscious of moral principles and therefore takes care to avoid such activities. Om Jnanatimurandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance to him and to all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So first I'd like to thank everyone for coming, and it includes those in cyberspace. For years I did this class. We had 2, 3, 4 was a huge crowd, and now we've expanded, so it's very gratifying. People want to hear Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. So, we're near the end of the chapter. Arjuna is getting cold feet. That's an understatement. He is suddenly overwhelmed with reluctance to fight in this battle. For years, the Mahabharata, if you read the Mahabharata, has been leading to this point, this confrontation between the Kurus and those led by the Pandavas, who are all part of the same clan, basically. But because of kind of an unusual situation in which Pandu, who was the eldest brother, he was the heir to the throne, and he wasn't the king, in fact. No, actually, he was the second eldest. Dhritarashtra was the eldest, but he was born blind, and therefore he was ineligible to inherit the kingdom, and therefore went to Pandu. And Pandu had these exalted sons. Of course, there's a whole story behind that I won't get into. But the Yudhishthira and Bhima and Arjuna and the 2 twins, and they formed the Pandavas, the 5 Pandavas. Very saintly. All of them were devotees of Krishna. In fact, they were intimate friends of Krishna. But Pandu died untimely. There's a whole story behind that we won't get into. And so here now you had Kunti, there's 2 wives. Madri, she entered into the fire, and Kunti was with these 5 young boys. And so what's going to happen with them? So Dhritarashtra, he took the role, even though he was blind, he took the role particularly as a caretaker of the throne. In other words, it was understood when the Pandavas grew up and they became eligible, they would then inherit the throne from Pandu, their father. But Dhritarashtra had these 100 sons, the leader of whom was Duryodhana, and he was thinking, wow, this is our chance, you know. I mean, my father's the eldest. By a technicality, he wasn't the king. Now he's the king, so we should inherit it. So there was this confusion of dharma, at least in the minds of Duryodhana and his brothers and his father. So this is setting up this internecine battle, which is building for many, many years. And the Duryodhana conspired, and Dhritarashtra agreed to try to exile the Pandavas, even kill them, and all of it failed because they were protected by Krishna, basically. So now finally it's come to this, a battle, huge battle, and the battlefield of Kuruksetra, which is still there, but which is a place of pilgrimage. It's known as Dharma Kshetra. This is the very first verse of the Bhagavad Gita. Because Parshuram, he had killed so many evil kings, and then he had made these lakes of their blood there, and it was a holy place. So, and Krishna was there on the side of the Pandavas, so it was a foregone conclusion that the Kurus would lose. And Dhritarashtra is hearing everything that's going on by the mystic power of his servant Sanjay, who was blessed by Vyasadeva with the ability to hear at a distance. So he's sitting in the palace, I think, but he can hear everything. So Arjuna has presented his case, and that is that, first of all, he has this tremendous feeling of kinship for his teacher, Dronacharya, who was on the other side, his Bhishma Dev, who took the role of a grandfather and helped raise the children and was loving and is the senior, most respected warrior on the whole battlefield, plus all of his cousins and cousin brothers and relatives-in-law who are on the other side. So he's thinking, what's the point? He's thinking in terms of the kingdom and what he would enjoy if he won back the kingdom. He was covered by Krishna, so he would express this. And so everything was on the bodily platform. My bodily relationship to all these others on the other side, kinship. What am I going to do with this kingdom? You know, I'll kill all of the blood will be on my hands. I'm the leading warrior, and the spoils will be soaked with the blood of the people who I love. Who wants this kingdom anyway? Let me go off and become a beggar. I'd rather do that. But there on the same chariot is Krishna, who he knows is the Supreme Personality of God, and who he knows wants this battle to be fought. So he's torn, he's paralyzed, he's dropped his bow, he sits down in the chariot. And we'll see in the beginning of the next chapter, it culminates in finally him surrendering to Krishna as a guru, not as a friend, because they were friends. So this is his final statement here in this first chapter. What's the point? How they're preparing to commit greatly sinful acts. So he's laid it out that the men will all be killed, the women will become unprotected, there will be all kinds of unwanted children born, they won't be protected, I'll be responsible, I'll go to hell and take everyone else with me. Who wants it? I mean, that was his argument. All right, text 45. Yadimam apatikaram ashastram shastapanayah Dhartarashtra Rane Hanyus Tanme Chema Tadam Bhavet. Better for me if the sons of Dhritarashtra, weapons in hand, were to kill me unarmed and unresisting on the battlefield. Purport. It is the custom, according to kṣatriya fighting principles, that an unarmed and unwilling foe should not be attacked. Arjuna, however, decided that even if attacked by the enemy in such an awkward position, he would not fight. He did not consider how much the other party was bent upon fighting. All these symptoms are due to soft-heartedness resulting from his being a great devotee of the Lord. Text 46. Sanjaya vacha eva muktvarjanak sankye rato pastu bhavishat Visridya sashadam chapam shoka sambhigna. Sanjay said, now Sanjay speaking to Dhritarashtra, he's relating this. Arjuna, having thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. Purport. While observing the situation of his enemy, Arjuna stood up on the chariot, but he was so afflicted with lamentation that he sat down again, setting aside his bow and arrows. Such a kind and soft-hearted person in the devotional service of the Lord is fit to receive self-knowledge. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of observing the armies on the battlefield of Kuruksetra. So we will proceed now with chapter 2, which really is the beginning of Krishna's instructions to Arjuna after a few verses. Sanjaya vacha tang tata kripaya vishtam ashupurna kulekshanam vishidandamidam vakyam uvacha madhusudanaha. Sanjaya said, seeing Arjuna full of compassion, his mind depressed, his eyes full of tears, Madhusudan, Krishna, spoke the following words. Purport. Material compassion, lamentation, and tears are all signs of ignorance of the real self. Compassion for the eternal soul is self-realization. The word Madhusudana is significant in this verse. Lord Krishna killed the demon Madhu, and now Arjuna wanted Krishna to kill the demon of misunderstanding that had overtaken him in the discharge of his duty. No one knows where compassion should be applied. Compassion for the dress of a drowning man is senseless. A man fallen in the ocean of nescience cannot be saved simply by rescuing his outward dress, the gross material body. One who does not know this and laments for the outward dress is called a Shudra, or one who laments unnecessarily. Arjuna was a kṣatriya, and this conduct was not expected from him. Lord Krishna, however, can dissipate the lamentation of the ignorant man, and for this purpose the Bhagavad Gita was sung by him. This chapter instructs us in self-realization by an analytical study of the material body and the spirit soul, as explained by the Supreme Authority, Lord Sri Krishna. This realization is possible when one works without attachment to fruited results and is situated in the fixed conception of the real self. So, this is now setting the scene for Krishna's beginning his instructions. And it's significant that Arjuna doesn't want to leave the battlefield out of cowardice. He's fought so many battles. He's a proven hero and a great, great warrior. But because he has a personal relationship with so many on the other side, this is what's paralyzing him, you see. It's one thing to be very heroic and to fight an enemy and kill him. But if that enemy happens to be your brother, then that's a different phenomenon. In other words, there's a pulling. There's two sides pulling you. One is whatever the argument may be. It may be justified, supposedly. But the other is this heart. You're feeling love. You're feeling you know this person, you know. So you're conflicted, in other words, what we call conflicted. And that's exactly Arjuna's condition, because he's not a cold-hearted. I mean, here on the other side, one of the most amazing statements will be coming up in text 7, or not text 7, a couple of verses after text 7, where Arjuna says, we would not even want to live. Why would we want to live if we would kill the sons of Dhritarashtra? Now here's someone who, but they tried to burn him alive. They sent him into a house a trick house made of lac, which it's not shellac, it's lac. And it's very, very flammable. And the whole conspiracy, Dhritarashtra was in on it, was that they would settle him in there nicely, you know, and everything. And then they would have somebody come and light it on fire, they would all be burned to ashes. This is what they were dealing with, and they tried to poison Bhima, and in all kinds of ways. And they were exiled to the forest for, 13, 14 years. So in so many ways, they had suffered attacks, but they always relied on Krishna, and Krishna always saved them, you know. But this is something else. Now Arjuna is expected to lead the counterattack and kill them, but he himself is feeling the pull of personal relationship with them. So it shows a very extraordinary heart, you see that. But it's still based on ignorance, ultimately. Okay. So, if there's any comment, raise your hand, or a question. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Kutustva Kashmalamidam Vishame Samapastitam Anayujashtam Asvargyam Akirti Kanamarjuna. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, my dear Arjuna, how have these impurities come upon you? They are not at all befitting a man who knows the value of life. They lead not to higher planets, but to infamy. Now, before I read this purport, I have to interject a little something about the revision of the Bhagavad Gita, because this is an ongoing issue even today. This is now almost 40 years later. 83 was when this edition came out. It's a revised edition. The first edition was published in 1972, not by the BBT. It didn't even exist yet. It was published by Macmillan, an international publisher. And how that happened is a total miracle. I'll tell that story some other days. We tried to get this published, that published, but nobody wanted to publish it, and then this international publisher took it. So the first one was abridged. They weren't ready to put in for a 1,000-page book, which this almost is. And but they said, no, you have to bridge it down to 400 pages maximum, which Prabhupada didn't like because it really had to cut out a lot of purports. But that was what we had, so we did it. And because that sold so well, but a few years later, 4 years later, said, okay, we're ready to publish the unabridged one, you know, which really Prabhupada really liked. That came out in 72. So Sri Bhagavan Vacha, and Prabhupada's going to give the purport is mostly on this first words, Sri Bhagavan Vacha, defining Bhagavan and the importance of that word. And Srila Prabhupada would always, always, always translate that as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sometimes, occasionally, the Supreme Personality like that, but almost always that was his phrase. And you'll see he explains it that way. But the first editor wanted to be a little more popular, so he consulted with other Bhagavad Gitas. There were many other translations. And one of them had this phrase, the Blessed Lord said. And so that was what was put in there. And that became a very beloved phrase. You know, it's more attractive literally than the Supreme Personality of Godhead said. It's shorter, Blessed Lord, you know, like that. So, but Prabhupada, he emphasizes the fact that Krishna, that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he always used that word. So Jayaveda Swami, the chief editor, he restored that. And to this day, it's an issue. So just be aware that what you're reading is the result of not only Srila Prabhupada's work and wonderful work of the first editor, don't get me wrong, he did a tremendous job, but a lot of study and revision and Gopi Puranadhana Prabhu going over the Sanskrit and so forth. Okay, let's read the purport. Krishna and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are identical. Therefore, Lord Krishna is referred to as Bhagavan throughout the Gita. Bhagavan is the ultimate in the Absolute Truth. The Absolute Truth is realized in three phases of understanding, namely Brahman, or the impersonal all-pervasive spirit, Paramatma, or the localized aspect of the Supreme within the heart of all living entities, and Bhagavan, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 1-11, this conception of the Absolute Truth is explained thus. I'll say, you say. Vadanti tat tattvadas tattvam yajnanamadvayam brahmeti paramatmeti Bhagavan iti shabdyate. The Absolute Truth is realized in three phases of understanding by the knower of the Absolute Truth, and all of them are identical. Such phases of the Absolute Truth are expressed as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. These three divine aspects can be explained by the example of the sun, which also has three different aspects, namely the sunshine, the sun's surface, and the sun planet itself. One who studies the sunshine only is the preliminary student. One who understands the sun's surface is further advanced, and one who can enter into the sun planet is the highest. Ordinary students who are satisfied by simply understanding the sunshine, its universal pervasiveness and the glaring effulgence of its impersonal nature, may be compared to those who can realize only the Brahman feature of the Absolute Truth. The student who has advanced still further can know the sun disk, who is compared to knowledge of the Paramatma feature of the Absolute Truth. And the student who can enter into the heart of the sun planet is compared to those who realize the personal feature of the Supreme Absolute Truth. Therefore, the bhaktas, or the transcendentalists who have realized the Bhagavan feature of the Absolute Truth, are the topmost transcendentalists, although all students who are engaged in the study of the Absolute Truth are engaged in the same subject matter. The sunshine, the sun disk, and the inner affairs of the sun planet cannot be separated from one another, and yet the students of the three different phases are not in the same category. The Sanskrit word Bhagavan is explained by the great authority Parashara Muni, the father of Vyasadeva. The Supreme Personality who possesses all riches, all strength, all fame, all beauty, all knowledge, and all renunciation is called Bhagavan. There are many persons who are very rich, very powerful, very beautiful, very famous, very learned, and very much detached. But no one can claim that he possesses all riches, all strength, etc. entirely. Only Krishna can claim this, because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No living entity, including Brahma, Lord Shiva, or Narayan, can possess opulence as fully as Krishna. Therefore, it is concluded in the Brahma Samhita by Lord Brahma himself that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No one is equal to or above him. He is the primeval Lord, or Bhagavan, known as Govinda, and he is the supreme cause of all causes. I'll say, you say. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadirarya Govinda Sarvakarna Karanam. There are many personalities possessing the qualities of Bhagavan, but Krishna is the supreme because none can excel him. He is the supreme person, and his body is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss. He is the primeval Lord Govinda, and the cause of all causes. Brahma Samhita 5.1. In the Bhagavatam also, there is a list of many incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but Krishna is described as the original personality of Godhead, from whom many, many incarnations and personalities of Godhead expand. Ete chang sakala pungsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam Indradi Vyakulang Lokam Mridayanti Yuge Yuge. Now, just a little note, this verse comes at the end of a list of many other incarnations, what we call Dasavatar and some others. That's why it says, all the lists of the incarnations of Godhead submitted herewith are either plenary expansions or parts of the plenary expansions of the Supreme Godhead, but Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Bhagavatam 1.3.28. Therefore, Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, the source of both the Super Soul and the impersonal Brahman. In the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Arjuna's lamentation for his kinsman is certainly unbecoming, and therefore Krishna expressed his surprise with the word kutaha, where from? Such impurities were never expected from a person belonging to the civilized class of men known as Aryans. The word Aryan is applicable to persons who know the value of life and have a civilization based on spiritual realization. Persons who are led by the material conception of life do not know that the aim of life is realization of the Absolute Truth, Vishnu or Bhagavan, and they are captivated by the external features of the material world, and therefore they do not know what liberation is. Persons who have no knowledge of liberation from material bondage are called non-Aryans. Although Arjuna was a kṣatriya, he was deviating from his prescribed duties by declining to fight. This act of cowardice is described as befitting the non-Aryans. Such deviation from duty does not help one in the progress of spiritual life, nor does it even give one the opportunity to become famous in this world. Lord Krishna did not approve of the so-called compassion of Arjuna for his kinsman. So, this is quite a rich purport here, which we'll explore a little bit. So, as I mentioned, Srila Prabhupada more or less devotes most of this purport to the very word Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. What is the Sri Bhagavan? And when you analyze this movement that Srila Prabhupada started and he, nourished and saw grow, and which is right in the line, coming down all the way from Lord Chaitanya and ultimately from Lord Krishna. One of the foundational axioms, if you will, is that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now that in itself assumes certain things. And because one is that there is such a thing as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that God exists. You have to get to that point. So the teaching that Krishna will start giving when in text 11 of this chapter begins with the preliminary point that we're not the body, but your spirit, your pure Atma. This alone is an essential first step in any spiritual path. Because if you remain on the bodily concept of life, then you'll be in Arjuna's situation. What's good for the body? What is my relationship with this body, that body? Is this pleasurable? Is this painful? You see? And those relationships can be very, very strong. Family relationships. This is exactly what Arjuna is dealing with here. And but understanding the temporary nature of the body and accepting intuitively by the word of Krishna, by superior authority, the existence of the soul and that it is eternal, then you see the contrast. The body is going to exist for a minuscule amount of time compared to the eternity of the soul, isn't it? And when you understand the eternity, that's both ways. We didn't come into existence when we were born. We've existed forever. We never did not exist. That's one of the first verses. Natve vaham jatu nasam natvam neme janaripa natcheva nabhavishyaza savevayamatak param. Krishna says to Arjuna, never was there a time when I did not exist, Arjuna, or you, or all these fighters on the battlefield. We've always existed as individual spirit souls. We exist now, and in the future we'll continue to exist. Now, once you accept that, or once you, at least preliminarily, it changes the whole calculation of what's important in your life. If you're only acting for the comfort and for the interests of this particular body, then it's a fool's errand. In other words, you're making a huge mistake. Because no matter what you do to improve this body, to make it stronger, make it richer, have so many wonderful relationships, sensations, happiness, this and that, it's all very temporary. And along with all of that, we know from experience in this world, goes the other side. There's all kinds of pains that come, you know, just think a minute about one of the threefold miseries, the daivi, adidaivic miseries. You can't stop them. There was just this incredible volcanic eruption near Tego. I don't even know where that is. That's in the Western Pacific, some island. Practically destroyed the island. I mean, it's like, it happened underneath. I mean, what can you do? It's just, it didn't happen. Well, we're sitting here 2 blocks from the ocean. It's a super powerful force, you know. And we take it, oh, this is very nice. And you have the ocean, you go down and watch the waves and everything. But that's a huge force. There could be a big earthquake right off the coast, a huge tsunami came over here. We got this little 20-foot wall. It's not going to help much. And here we are running toward Kate Sessions Park, trying to get a little higher so we won't be in.
We had warnings.
Warnings, yes, there was little warnings from that very explosion, that volcanic. You know, nothing happened. A little tickle in Hawaii. Okay, we can forget about it. You know, but no, one day it comes. Either the adhyatmic, adidaivic comes, and you're finished. But the point is, you're not finished. The body is finished, and all your plans for this body and success and relationships finished. Then you're on your journey, and you're not in control. You know, just the total material life. Whatever you've done, the consciousness you've created, this is all part of the Bhagavad Gita. That will determine your destiny. We're determining it day by day, moment by moment, by what we do, what desires we cultivate, what we try to enjoy. You know, what we read, what we hear, all of the senses, all this creates a consciousness, which is the template for your next body, what you're creating in your consciousness. And so that's, it's not something you can deduce by your own investigation. This knowledge comes from above. And that's why we're reading this. Srila Prabhupada was a realized master in this science. He came, he wrote this not on his own. A lot of this, you know, he's getting a lot of inspiration and information from Baladev Vidyabhushan, who's a great commentator. He's basing it on previous acharyas' knowledge and his own realization. So, why is it this is so dramatic? Arjuna is torn by precisely these bodily relationships that are so powerful. That's pulling him to start, not fight. And Krishna says, no, you must fight. This is for the good of yourself, for the good of the world, really. It's not for the degradation of the world. He has this argument that, oh, I'm going to ruin. But no, because Yudhishthira will be the king, righteousness will reign, and so like that. So it's a stark difference. Now, we should understand that Arjuna is an eternal friend of Krishna. Whenever Krishna appears in this world, Arjuna appears with him in some capacity. But he forgets, because he has to leave the body. He's different from his body, even though he's a great soul. Krishna isn't. Krishna is his body. He's pure spirit. So he remembers everything, and he'll say in chapter 4, I spoke the same science to the sun god 100 million years ago. And Arjuna, playing the role assigned to him, says, how's that possible? We're contemporaries, we're friends, you know. I remember you were a child, and you grew up. He says, yeah, I've had many, many births, but I don't change. Bahuni me vatitani janmani tabachatani. That I appear, you know, I voluntarily, by my own will, and I don't forget because I don't change my body. But you do. So has anyone here remembered his past body? We get a lot of things we forget even in this body. What to speak of what happened in the last body. So the whole point I'm trying to make is that the tension is set up. Arjuna's been covered over by Krishna for the purpose of speaking the Bhagavad Gita. And wherever it says, you know, where he says he's lamenting and so forth, this is part of the whole play that the stage set, so that Arjuna will be enlightened. And if we follow in his footprints and also receive the Bhagavad Gita as he does, then we can also have the same benefit. And Prabhupada explained, Krishna is present in his words. When they're presented as they are, without distortion, then Krishna is present there, and we can associate with Krishna directly. We should feel that Krishna will be speaking directly to us. Yeah, go ahead. But we need the mic. We should really deploy both mics instead of just one.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol, Arjun.
So Krishna, the Supreme Personality, right? So the war happened in Kuruksetra, and that's when he spoke Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
So he probably knew the war is going to happen.
Totally knew.
He probably knew that that's when he has to speak, Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. So was that predetermined, everything?
Well, yeah. I mean, he says, "Vedaham samatitade vartamani bhavishyani buddhi namta vedana kṣatriya." I know everything that happened in the past. As you think about that, is mind blowing. Everything that happened, every little thing, and everything's happening now, and everything that happened in the future. So yes, he was like a maestro or like a director. The whole thing was a play really, but Arjun really was bewildered here. In other words, he was temporarily bewildered so that he could be delivered, and we could understand, and we could receive all this essential knowledge, and we could hear it. So it's but Krishna is also taking a role here, right? He's not going to fight personally, but he's on the side of Arjuna, and when he says he promises not to fight, but he does fight, in order to save Arjuna, right? When Bhishma comes, so there's that. So there's a lot of things going on here, but the main there's so many things in this verse, but the main one is Srila Prabhupada came to give the message of Krishna consciousness so that as many people as possible could be delivered out of his own compassion, which is characteristic of real Vaishnavas, and he had to face a wall of ignorance. People who were so far from the Vedic culture, they didn't know anything. But there was an advantage over India. He tried like anything in India. And indeed, he had some good prospects there, but it was taken away. Krishna, the League of Devotees he started in Jhansi, he had the use of a building. He was trying to get the building in his name, but he couldn't. And ultimately, it was taken away. So ultimately, he came to America, age 69, failing health, no money, no friends. Is that a time to undertake an international voyage? Not on a plane, on a cargo ship, But out of compassion, following the order of a spiritual master, and trying to fulfill Lord Chaitanya's mission that all over the world, my name will be chanted. It wasn't just India. It was all over the world, that wasn't it. So Srila Prabhupada undertook it. And he came to, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, not just God consciousness. He came to prove that your spirit, there's a supreme spirit, God, and Krishna is God. Krishna is God. And there's a whole book written by Rupa Goswami to prove that. It's called the Laghu Bhagavatamrita. So many Shastra references and proofs. That's been translated beautifully by my old friend Gopi Puranadana Prabhu. So now he's starting with that. The Sri Bhagavan Ravacha, and he explains that in this wonderful verse. This is very memorable. He quotes from the Bhagavatam, which is also, expansion. I mean, the unabridged, philosophy. And this one phrase, that Prabhupada quotes, the verse on page 66, Ete Changstakala Pungsa. You can all memorize this one phrase. It's very easy. Krishnas tu Bhagavan Swayam. That Krishna is Bhagavan himself, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are many other personalities of Godhead. Narayan, and Ram, and Matsya Avatar, and Varaha. They come like this. There's many, unlimited. And all of them are as powerful as Krishna, but they don't manifest that power. They don't manifest all the beauty that he had. Matsya was incredible. He saved the Vedas. He was huge, very powerful. But he didn't have the beauty that Krishna had, And so Krishna is Bhagavan himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which means that he can relate to all of us and he can attract all of us with these qualities. Every living entity can be attracted to Krishna and can find fulfillment in taking on our actual Sarup, which is servant of Krishna. We can be happy in that. I'm not going to serve anyone. Yes, you are. You're serving right now. Don't you have to serve your lungs? Take a deep breath, right? And you have to serve the belly, and you have to serve your boss, and you so many demands of the senses and the mind. So we're already servants. But what's the result of that service? If you just serve, yourself, your illusory self, you take another body, which is a lot of suffering. Little pleasure, a lot of suffering. That's what it is. There's no hope. When we have as aspirations, this is asha. These asha pasha, the ropes of hope for somehow being happy in this world. It cannot happen. You may be happy for a little while, but it's a total illusion. Because this is the world of change, Bhavasagara, the ocean of becoming. And even though you may be happy now, you're becoming older. And eventually as you get older, believe me, I'm starting to feel it. Things don't work as well. Strange pains start coming. Where did that come from? I had I'd like to say had now. I had a sprained ankle. Many of you have seen I had this sprain. That's why I'm sitting like this, because it's not 100% healed. And I had sprained ankles before in my life. I had one, I'll tell you, I have a minute here. It happened just before Rath Yatra in LA. Some of you who've been around for a while, Los Angeles Rath Yatra, the high point of the year, before COVID, And we drive up every year, and I would usually get to lead the kirtan for the Balaram's cart. That was San Diego's a sign. Some of you remember who've been around for a long time. And so, it was like Thursday before. And Saturday night, they have a big Harinam down the promenade, So I was anticipating all this, and I stepped off the curb. Oh, God. I just sprained my ankle. Oh, great, just before Rath Yatra, I won't be able to walk or anything. So I followed the RICE program, rice, rest, ice, compression, and elevation. So I had my foot up, in a room inside, chanting Hare Krishna, This will never, But then miraculously, by Krishna's grace, when I didn't go to the Saturday night, but when Sunday came along, I was able to walk, and put on my sneakers, and I was able to walk in the Rath Yatra. I said, "Oh, thank you, Krishna," like that. 4 days, 3 or 4 days, it was better. Now this latest one, I had another one here, and that was like weak on the outside, and I was fine, So this was a serious sprain. And I was swelled up, I could hardly walk, I couldn't come to the morning program, I had to rest in bed, pain and swelling and pain. Finally, after a week, I started to be able to, at least a week, maybe more than a week, I was able to come to the morning program with the cane. First I started with crutches, but I gave that up. What's going on here, And several things was going on. It was a worse sprain, and I was older. And you get older, you don't heal as fast. And this thing dragged on. It went on for 3 months before I was actually able to do my little exercise walking. Now I'm able to get, it's like, thank you, get that back. So this is old age. Things just don't work as well, And so if you're trusting this body to give you the same pleasure that it gave before, you're going to be disappointed. You're going to be desperate. You're going to be depressed. Shoka. You're going to get. But if you're not, if you realize, okay, this is just, and you're getting your pleasure from chanting Hare Krishna and from serving Krishna, you don't have to be depressed, And so it's such a blessing, to have this, Krishna consciousness and such wonderful devotees to associate with the beautiful deities. It never gets old because it's the soul. It's not the body, the desperate body, which is a great lie. Talk about the big lie. This is the biggest lie since time immemorial, is that you are the body. Maya is much more skilled con artist than anyone else, trying to get you to try to enjoy these senses so that you remain in the grips. It's her job to see if we're sincere. So Krishna consciousness gives us the method, the way of transferring our attachments and our hopes and our aspirations and our source of pleasure from the gross and subtle body, and the subtle body is a big one too, it's the mind, to spirit, to pure spirit in relation to Krishna. So the process works, and that's why it grew, because Prabhupada gave this holy name, and in America no one knew anything. Yeah, I'll try it. Hare Krishna, that sounds interesting. And so they chant Hare Krishna and experience. Whereas in India said, oh, Hare Krishna, I know Hare Krishna. He couldn't get traction, you know, until later when he came back to India in 1970, I think it was, 72 maybe. No, yeah, it was 72. That he came back and he had all these devotees, and no one had ever seen anything like that. These Westerners, they were dancing and chanting blissfully. He would get crowds of thousands of people, you know, and they would listen to him, and this way India started. Now India is 10 times bigger than the rest of ISKCON put together. Yeah, it's you know, the home. So I thought I'd share that with you. Any comments? Yeah.
Even when I was like in school, in our school, like maybe 5th, 8th grade, I just trying to share experience, my experience, this process. So we used to have Sanskrit mandatory. And Sanskrit language, one subject mandatory to study till 8th grade.
Okay.
And they used to have some Bhagavad Gita slokas, like to remember, and you have to give exam and write.
Okay.
And I grew up and went to masters, you know, PhD, then I met ISKCON and know Prabhupada. Till then, I read Bhagavad Gita from Gita Press or somewhere here, there. But none of the authors, or including family members or the people I met, I lived 5 years in Ayodhya, none of the religious people will directly want to dare to say that here is the God. They always try to make it secular or softer. Okay, everyone is God. Shiva is God, Brahma is God, Vishnu is God. So, but not Krishna, because there is a controversy, right? Some people believe Krishna was enjoyer, maybe he was imaginary, he was a good knowledgeable person, give a Bhagavad Gita. But I think only Prabhupada, he put directly Supreme Personality of Godhead. Godhead, not just God, but the head of the God, right? And this was, you know, when I read first time Bhagavad Gita, like, what is this? Like, never read. And not just saying it, but he put it critical analysis, not just saying that, okay, he is and you believe it. But he gave so many criteria, 6 opulences, and how do you test them out? You know?
Yeah, that's very, very nice account. And we'll have to end in a minute or two. But Prabhupada, you know, would always insist, and this is where he gets his strength. He's channeling, if you will, all the acharyas, and especially his own acharya, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who was uncompromising. And the thing is that Gaudiya Vaishnavism had become covered in the 19th century until Bhaktivinoda, because of all kinds of upper sampradayas. They, you know, this line, but they didn't accept so many rules and regulations, you know, and it became, because it looks like lasciviousness. It looks like, you know, well, that's immoral, you know. But it's the greatest morality, you know, you have to understand. So Prabhupada being uncompromising, that's why he was successful, because it was a real thing. And when he was giving the Hare Krishna mantra, you know, on the basis that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and because of his own nature, it was potent. It was, you know, the receptive souls who, when we first contacted him, many came and left and, you know, didn't come back. But some stuck with it, and they practiced nicely, and they became transformed and convinced this is the real thing. And a few great souls like Giriraj Swami, who'd been around for over 50 years, you know, and was able to undertake a great austerity in this story. I highly recommend this book, I Will Build You a Temple. His account of the Juhu temple coming up. It was a great struggle. And it showed, you know, I mean, there was one, in one Rath Yatra, and I was there in L.A., spoke about that, and one lady who'd been there with Giriraj Swami, who was also at that Rath Yatra, she was there in Juhu when they attacked and tried to wreck the little temporary temple, the police that had been put up to it by the owner. And she was trying to block them with herself, you know, heroically. They grabbed her by the hair and were dragging her on the ground and everything. And you know, to be able to be courageous enough to do something like that, and that's coming from the genuine sense that, you know, Srila Prabhupada has authorized everything, and this is, you know, and this is what Prabhupada was able to do with ordinary Westerners. She's some girl from America who was transformed by Krishna consciousness. Okay, we'll resume tomorrow. Thank you for your attention. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.